You can walk into any shop right now, tap your phone against a little plastic box, and walk out with a coffee. No gold changed hands. You gave the cashier a sequence of invisible numbers and they handed you something real. Actually stop and think about that for a second. The coffee is real, the cup is real, but the money on your screen is basically a shared hallucination. How did the human brain learn to trust a ghost? If you open any economics textbook, they'll tell you this neat origin story. Before money, humans used the barter system. You had a spare chicken, you needed shoes. So you walked around until you found someone who had extra shoes and also desperately wanted your chicken. Economists call this the coincidence of wants. Sounds reasonable, right? Except anthropologists went and looked for actual evidence of this barter system. They tracked ancient tribes across human history. They looked everywhere, and they found nothing. The barter economy never existed. It's a myth that economists made up to explain something they hadn't actually studied. Think about how people in small tribes actually behaved. You're living in a group of 100 people, 5,000 years ago. You go out and gather way more apples than you can eat. You come back to camp and your neighbor is starving. Do you look at him and say, "All right, what do you got for me?" No, you just give him the apple, because that guy is your cousin, or your childhood friend, or the one who fought off a leopard for you last week. This is what historians call a gift economy, but it wasn't pure charity either. Humans have a deeply wired psychological thing called reciprocity. When someone does something for you, your brain registers it like a debt. You remember it. They remember it. The first accounting system wasn't written on clay or paper. It was stored in human memory. This worked fine for thousands of years, but it had a hard limit. Evolutionary psychologists figured out that your brain can only properly track relationships with about 150 people. They call it Dunbar's number. So what happens when your tribe of 150 grows into a city of 10,000? Or what happens when a stranger shows up at your door with a rare tool you really need? You don't know his name, you don't know his family, you'll probably never see him again. If you give him your apples today on a promise, he can just walk away. The memory-based trust system completely breaks down the moment you're dealing with a stranger. This is exactly when money got invented. Not to measure wealth, not to make trading easier in some abstract sense. Money was invented to solve a trust problem. Instead of trusting the person, humans figured out they could create an object that everyone trusted. Rare shells, blocks of salt, strange feathers. It didn't really matter what the object was, as long as everyone agreed it had value. As the first big cities started growing in Mesopotamia, even objects weren't enough. Keeping track of who owned what became impossible at that scale. So people turned to a new technology, wet river mud, pressed flat into a tablet, with a stylus to scratch in the details. These clay tablets are the oldest writing ever found in human history. We didn't invent writing for poetry. We didn't invent it for philosophy or religion. We invented writing to track who owed money to the king. Here's something wild about those clay tablets. They worked almost exactly like modern cryptocurrency. If you held a tablet that said the city granary owed you 10 bags of wheat, you could hand that tablet to a total stranger in exchange for a goat. The stranger didn't need to trust you personally. He just trusted the tablet. Eventually, mud tablets gave way to stamped gold and silver coins, first appearing in ancient Lydia around 600 BC. But here's where the history gets a little dark. Coins weren't spread by peaceful merchants looking to trade fairly. They were spread by empires that needed to fund massive armies. If you're a king sending 10,000 soldiers into a foreign land, those soldiers need to eat. Local farmers won't accept a promise from an invading army, but they will accept a piece of stamped gold. Coins let empires scale up violence because gold is a language that even your enemy understands. So let's come back to your phone screen. Clay tablets, gold coins, paper bills, a number on a bank app. The technology keeps changing, but the underlying human behavior has never changed once. Money is not a physical thing. It is a social technology built to bridge the gap between strangers. The number on your screen only has value because millions of other people agree to believe in the exact same illusion at the same time. The next time you tap your phone to pay for something, you're not just spending money. You're spending a little piece of trust that took 5,000 years for humans to build.